Hello to everyone. Hope everyone had a wonderful week. Um, so this week's parsha is Parshas Toldos, and I wanted to focus on really one main point, which I think is probably very, very nageya our times, and that is the following. As is well known throughout the story, the you deal with a very, very basic question, which is that Yaakov Avinu is known as the Av Emes, the Av of truth. And that being the case, it is very, very hard to understand in this week's Parsha how it is that Yaakov Avinu deceives his father, and Yitzchak says, "Ba'achicha b'mirma v'yikach b'irchasecha." He says it mefurish that Yaakov came in trickery and took right here. So Rashi says b'chachma. So simply speaking, it's quite hard to understand how it is that Yaakov is the ish tam yoshev halim, how he presents midas ha'emes if he is deceiving his father. And we have also a Rashi on next week's parsha, and it says that Yaakov told Rachel ki achi aviyahu. Here it is, that he is the brother of her father, Rivka, when he's Rivka's son. So, as is well known, obviously that's not true. He's not the brother of Lavan; he's the nephew of Lavan. So Rashi says ki achi is Karl Levia. Midrasho im Ramos huba gam ani achi beramos. Right there. So Yaakov is he's stating that he is Achiv Beramos to Lavan. And Lavan is known as Lavan Ha'arami, literally. Right? We say, when we reference Lavan in the Haggadah, we say Arami Ovei Davi. We don't even call him Lavan, we call him Arami. Meaning the whole essence of Lavan was his trickery. And yet, Yaakov Avinu is telling Rachel, Achiv Ani Beramos, that I'm his brother Ramos. So you see, Yaakov is the trickster. So if he's a trickster, how does that make sense? How does it make sense that Yaakov is the Ish Emes, and at the same time, he's this tremendous trickster, and he's deceiving people all the time? He's deceiving Yitzchak, then he deceives Esav later on in Parshas Vayishlach, L'chayra. It's hard to understand what's going on with that. And then, the other pliya in this Parsha is the idea that we have over here, which is that it says that um, that Yitzchak liked Esav because Esav was Tzayed Befiv. What does that mean? Tzayed Befiv. Rashi. Rashal Pivshal Esav Shayat Tzad Oisai Umeramehu Bidvarav. So you have the Ramos again, and it seems to be that Yitzchak, Esav was, the simple reading of Rashi is that Esav successfully tricked Yitzchak into thinking that he was a tzaddik. And therefore, the simplest question that you're left with is, what are we saying here? I mean, are we saying, when we talk about the avos, we're not talking about me and you. We're not talking about people who are simpletons, who have, we're talking about people with Ruach HaKodesh, with Nevuah, and Yitzchak Avinu is someone who was an Ola Tamima. According to Medrash, he literally saw the Shechina. I mean, it's a pliya. To understand this Rashi and to say that the reason why Yitzchak liked Esav is because Esav successfully tricked Yitzchak into thinking that he was a Shemer Torah mitzvahs. It's a pliya to say that. And I have two rayas, that in fact Yitzchak didn't think that at all. What are my two rayas? Let's go over here. So it says over here, and keep in mind, this is before the parsha of the brachos, which means, simply speaking, although you could say mukta mucha b'Torah, but if you don't have an agenda, then ein mukta mucha b'Torah is not something you would say mistama. It's only if there's a reason, or you have a kasha, or you want to, so then you say mukta mucha. But simply speaking, if we don't see a reason, then l'chara it's in order. Therefore, it says over here like this: So Esav married at 40 years old two non-Jewish Canaanite women, and it says, "Vatiyena moiras ruach liyitzchak u'lerivka." Why Rashi says shayu ardif avodah zara, because they were worshiping idols. In addition, what does moiras ruach mean? Hayu lahaches u'liyitzavim. So it was upsetting to Yitzchak that Esav, his son, married two non-Jewish women who were serving avodah zara. It was upsetting to him, meaning he knew it was happening, and it was upsetting to him. And it was lahaches, and it was saddening to him. So clearly Yitzchak knew. Clearly, it was Mayras Ruach. The pasuk state Mayras Ruach leYitzchak. Yitzchak had this feeling, so he knew. Then, so what are you going to say? So Yitzchak knows that his son Esav is marrying Shegitz, and what, he's okay with it. He's okay with it because Esav successfully asked him, "Oh, Tati, how do you ma'aser? How are you ma'aser on Melach?" Because he asked him that shaila, so therefore, even though Yitzchak knew that he was marrying non-Jewish women, which was the whole thing of Avraham Avinu, that you can't marry out, so that made it that he was. It's a pliya. That doesn't make sense. Clearly, Yitzchak knew. That's raya number one. Raya number two is when Yaakov, I don't know, this is getting stuck very often for some reason. When Yaakov goes to Yitzchak to get the brachos, so he says ki hikra. So Yaakov says, Yitzchak asks, how come you have mazem hartem tzol b'ni right over here? How come you found it so fast? So his response is ki hikra Hashem Elokecha lefanoi, because your God, Hashem, your God, put it in before me. So then it says, Vayomer Yitzchak el beno. I don't know what is happening with this. Vayomer Yitzchak el beno. Yitzchak says to his son, Geshanav amushcha b'ni. He says, come close and let me feel you. So if this is going to be functional, here we go. Amar Yitzchak belibo. Yitzchak said in his heart, meaning why did Yitzchak want to feel Yaakov? He said, Ein derech Esav li'eshem shemayim shagor b'fiv. V'zeh amar ki hikra Hashem Elokecha. So Yitzchak, there was a tell. Yaakov had a tell. You know what his tell was? He used Hashem's name in a way that was nonchalant. And because Yitzchak knew that Esau would never use Hashem's name nonchalantly, that caused him to be suspicious. Perhaps this is Yaakov. So it's clear. Yitzchak knows Esau so well that he knows that Esau doesn't even mention God's name. So what are you saying? The guy's marrying girls who worship avodah zara. Esav understands that he doesn't even mention. Yitzchak understands that Esav doesn't even mention God's name ever. So it makes him so suspicious. It makes him suspicious that maybe it's not him because he's mentioning God's name. Could you imagine? It's crazy to think that that's the pshat. He's on the derech and he's a big tzaddik, but it's a suspicious thing that he's even mentioning the name of God. It's a pliya. So obviously it's not a pshat. So let's now try to get down to what is the understanding of why Yitzchak, knowing, and again, which is, we got two rayas, very, very good rayas, knowing that Esav was a person who did not have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and did marry non-Jewish women, and those non-Jewish women did worship avodah zara, and why still did he want to give him the brachos? That's the shayla. And it's talui, the answer is within a very, very, very clear idea about the metzius of what Yitzchak was and how Esav was carrying that on. And that is, and we discussed this in the past, but I want to re-emphasize it, is that we understood in the past that Yitzchak's midah, the entire essence of what Yitzchak was din. And we said din means that you have a demand of the world for the world to come to its completion. Completion defined as a stages of identity build up within humanity as a whole to the place in which they will finally, as a result of what they are, have a recognition of God. So let me try to break that down a little more simply. That what that means is the following. The structure of all development in the world works in the following manner. You have an idea. So you have learning. You have an idea. Then you have, meaning you have an idea, perspective. And then what happens is that you take action on that perspective. When you take action on that perspective, the perspective that you took action upon gets upgraded from simply being an outlook on life or an idea that you have, and it gets upgraded to becoming part of who you are. It gets upgraded to becoming part of who you are. So, therefore, the Yesod is, and therefore, once it's part of who you are, then now that leads you to have an appreciation for something which is the end goal. So therefore, the Yesod is like this. The way that the development of the world it works is that people are going to learn, and when they learn, that gives them a perspective, and then they act upon doing mitzvos, those perspectives. Then those perspectives that they acted upon become part of their identities, meaning the way that they orient themselves towards the world on an emotional level, and then that level is meant to go to the point where now emotionally people have a innate recognition of God, which is the ultimate goal of all of creation. Right? That everyone's going to be makir HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But makir doesn't mean I'm going to have an intellectual understanding that God exists, because many people have that, and millions of people have that today. Makir means it's going to be an emotional orientation towards reality that God exists. In other words, I'm going to relate to God emotionally, and he's going to exist to me on a pure emotional level. And the aside, therefore, is that din wants that people should actualize themselves in a manner in which that reality of what they are is closer or is entirely in recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what gives everything its existence. So Mimela, what you have is the following thing. Din, we said, was the aside that it was a show. In other words, that din means that there is an external reality of what occurs, and that external reality is meant to make an impression upon other people, and it's therefore meant to get them closer to their din, to their point of actualization, such that they, in what they are now closer to emotionally orienting themselves to the fact that there is a God in the world. That's what din is. And therefore, Yitzchak going to the Akedah, we asked a bunch of kashas, and you look at the Rashis, it says, Ata Yadati, Rashi says, now I have what to be Meshiv to the Umas Ha'olam. I don't have to remind you, we had that whole thing last year. Rashi says, Ata Yadati, what does Hashem gain, Kaviyachol, from the Akedah? Now I know means, now I have what to be Meshiv to the Umas Ha'olam. Because they asked me, what's so special about you, Avraham Avinu? So it's all about Avraham Avinu doing something which can create the metzius of an impression upon the rest of the world, such that it shows and it gives an emotional attachment to the reality of there being a God in the world. And therefore, Yitzchak's understanding and Yitzchak's metzius and what he is he is someone who completely sacrificed the reality of what he is, and such that he is entirely a external reality of an internal reality of someone else. Which is, if you look through the Parsha, again, we discussed this last year, that the entire Parsha it's almost funny that the entire Pasha basically repeats everything that Avram's life is repeated. Right? So Yitzchak goes to Gerar. Oh my gosh, it's your sister. Oh my gosh, I'm redigging the barrels. Oh my gosh, there's a famine. Oh my god, all these different things. Basically, it's a repeat of Avram's life, and we saw the Medrash that says that Yitzchak is called Avram, and we saw that Medrash, and we spoke about that. But essentially, one has to understand is that Yitzchak's understanding of the world is that there is a requirement for someone to create an external structure and reality of a self, such that external structure and reality of that self will be able to be perceived by those around it, and that perception of what's around it will then lead them closer to their own progress and development towards actualization of orientation of emotional self to a world in which part of that orientation is that God is taken for granted. So therefore, Yitzchak understands that the ability to be merameh, is the ikar ability that one needs in order to accomplish this mission. What does Ramos mean? Ramos is the taich that a person has the ability to create a structure of reality that is based in the perspective of those who are trying to perceive it what they want. Meaning, if someone is a Ramai, what essentially means like this. This is my Shiva Rebbe Zalshita defines it. He says a Ramai means like this. When you do it in sales. If you go up to someone in a sale and you say, "I'm trying to sell you solar panels," so the salesman comes and he says, "Listen, I need you to sell you solar panels because I want to make a commission check of 5,000 so I can support my family." So if anyone would say that, obviously they never get the sale because it's irrelevant. Rather, what does someone say? They say they list a series of points which will be better for the person who they're trying to get to buy the solar. And they're saying, well, buy solar because it'll save you money. Buy solar because it's green energy, if you care about that. Right? And they'll give them a list of why they would want to do something, even though clearly their agenda is for themselves. And yet they're presenting it as if it's going to be the best of the person who they're trying to get to do what they're trying to do. That is trickery. But that is the metzius of what it means to create a structure of reality which is meant to be, it's for the sake of being perceived. That's the definition of what that is. So mirma is the creation, is the person's ability to create a reality, the goal of which that reality is only that it's being perceived by those around it. It doesn't speak to the internal part of the person at all. And yet, because that was the whole thing that Yitzchak did in the Akedah, therefore he understands that is the etzem midah that someone needs in order to be and to carry forward the mission of Yisrael. And by the way, the two names, Yaakov and Yisrael, represent these two things. Yisrael is a sar kel. Sar is an officer, which has an inherent implication of a position which is meant to be over other people, meaning that it's a mechanism of reality which exists only in contrast to the people who are viewing it. Whereas, let me just explain that very clearly. If someone is an officer, right? If someone has a position in society, that means nothing about them. The fact that someone is an officer in a society is nothing to do with the reality of the internal aspects of what they are. It's just that the name officer means that you have an enforcement position, lagabe everyone else, so therefore you're an officer. So sar is an inherently chitzoniistic description of a metzius. So sar kel, Yisrael is sar kel, that's the external part. And that's why Yaakov gets it when he beats the Malach of Esav. Okay. Yaakov is the internal, and that's why Klal Yisrael is called both, because we need the internal, the Ishtam, and we need the Yisrael. Anyways, but let's get to what the idea is over here. The idea is that this is the reason when it says that Esav, that Yitzchak loved Esav Gitzayed Befiv, it doesn't mean that Esav successfully tricked Yitzchak into thinking that he was a Groisa, amazing, from Shemer Torah mitzvahs who is trying to figure out how to take Meiser off salt. That's not what it means. What it means is that Yitzchak knew that Esav was deceiving him. He knew that. But that was the whole thing. He wanted someone. He needed someone who was able to deceive. He needed someone who was able to create a structure with the goal of which that structure is only for the sake of its being perceived. He needed that. That's what he felt was necessary for the mission of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, when it says that Yitzchak loved Esav Yitzhak Befiv, that's exactly what it's saying. According to the people who think that it means that he actually successfully, it should say that what the pasuk should say is Vayehav Yitzchak es Esav ki hu shomer Torah mitzvahs, and then it meaning and how so? How is that true? Because he tricked him. So we would explain that he tricked him, but it's not saying that. The pasuk is saying that he loved him because Tzayed Befiv, because he was tricking him. He loved him for the trickery. That's the pshat. And therefore, we now can understand a beautiful thing. We also said this last time. And we said that when it says over here by Yaakov Avinu, it says that Yaakov Avinu came and he said, Atazeh. So we asked him. And he said, I am Esav, your Bechar. So Rashi says, Anochi amei v'lecha, v'Esav hu b'charecha. So we said that, simply speaking, it's like playing footsie. It's like Rashi wants that it's splitting apart, and therefore he's not stating a lie. But everybody knows that the way that Gnevas Das works is that Gnevas Das means that even though you say something, you might be saying something that's true, but especially if you know that it's going to have an impression upon someone else that's going to be a lie, that's still Gnevas Das, obviously. So it's and if you read the Rashi, in your mind, you're like, okay, what does Rashi want with this? Obviously, Yaakov is telling Yitzchak, I am Esav. That's obviously what he's doing here. Rashi is not saying that Yaakov is telling Yitzchak, no, I'm Yaakov, but Esav is your Bechor. If that's what Yaakov was telling him, then Yitzchak would say, okay, get out of here. I don't want to give you the brachas. I want to give him to Esav. Obviously, Rashi is not saying that Yaakov is telling him that. So what is Rashi talking about? So Rashi is saying like this. And we said very, very, very important thing. Anochi. The word Anochi means, we said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have a physical self. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, that Maharshiva also said this, I need to get more than Makaris. Anochi refers to an existential Metzius. It doesn't refer to the being himself. It refers to an existential reality of that being, the existential of what they are. And we touched, and we said like this. We said that the reason why Yitzchak ends up saying Gam Baruch Yiyeh is because, and Yitzchak says this, Ba achicha b'mirma vayikach birchasecha. He says this, your brother came b'mirma, and it says Gam Baruch Yiyeh, meaning that Yitzchak said that since Yaakov came b'mirma, therefore Gam Baruch Yiyeh, because now I see that Yaakov also has the ability to be Merama, and since he has the ability to be Merama, that's why Gam Baruch Yiyeh. And we understand is that when Yaakov says to Yitzchak, Anochi Esav bechayrecha, what he is saying is that because of the fact that I am now tricking, what that means is that I am taking on the reality of Esav, and that is now what I am. I am now Esav. Now, that is very, very much the Metzius of how Mirma works. Yitzchak wants to bless Esav. So Yaakov says, okay, there's going to be a trickery. There's going to be Mirma now. And that trickery is going to make it that I will become Esav for this moment. I will become Esav. And when I am Esav, therefore I will get the brachos. Because that's the whole definition of trickery. Definition of trickery is the ability to create a reality of self which serves the purpose singularly of being perceived. And Yaakov was able to overcome his innate tamus, his innate Yaakov ish tamness, and he was able, with the help of Rivka, he was able to create and to make and to get into the mental reality of Esav. And he was able to become him for that moment. Now, what Rashi is saying is like this. What Rashi is saying is that even though it's true that Yaakov is deceiving Esav, there's Gnevas Das happening, but Yaakov, because of the reality of what he is, he can't, it was against his nature to be moti a lie from his mouth. Because again, there's two parts to it. There is, I'm creating a version of reality of myself in order for it to be perceived by Yitzchak, and there is what I actually say as me. Yaakov as himself never would lie. And therefore, when he spoke these words, Rashi is telling you that he can't have been speaking a lie within the words. The totality of all the words combined will create an image, which is mirma, which is chachma, which is what Yaakov was doing so that it could be perceived that it's Esav, which is the whole definition of mirma. And that's true. But the actual words that he is stating, he can't be saying a lie. And Memela, we now have the answer of how it could be that Yaakov is an Ish Emes and still he's doing this deceiving. Because Enochanami, it's true. Yaakov, when he does mirma, he is Esav Bechorecha. Yaakov does take on the role of Esav Bechorecha. And in fact, we know that he marries Leah, who's the Zivug of Esav. And we know that the split in the Shvatim, the sons of Leah have Midos, which are Esav. And that comes out in Shimon and Levi, where it says, Klei Chamas Mecherosehem, that they took the Midas of Esav. And it comes out in David HaMelech, who is the ultimate progeny of Yehuda, because it says David HaMelech was an Admoni, he was red, just like Esav was red, etc., 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 rayas upon rayas. But it's clear that Yaakov had now the responsibility and the metzius of becoming someone else by taking on visual structure. And the main yesod that I really want to get out of this is that contemporarily, when we really have to understand, my Reb Matas Weinberg Shlita says that it's a Rashi really. Rashi says that someone that we have the responsibility to separate between a tahar and a tummy animal. And Rashi asks, what do you mean to separate a tahar and tummy animal? The person needs to tell me that I shouldn't eat a camel, but I can eat a cow. A cow and a camel are two totally different animals. What do I need? I don't need to separate between them. You told me that a cow is kosher. You told me that they already told me separately. A cow is kosher and a camel is not. So I won't eat. I won't eat a camel. I'll eat a cow. What is this? What is this idea? What's this pasuk trying to tell me? And you should be mavdil. What are you talking about? Answer. Rashi answers. It's to be mavdil between an animal that was nishchat with a roiv shtei konim, I think, with that there's two jugular veins, and they have to be. You have to have a roiv. You have to cut when you cut a animal, a shech. You have to slice through the majority of two of its jugular veins. And Rashi says that you have to be mavdil between an animal which was cut with just one jugular vein or not a roiv, and an animal that was cut with a roiv jugular veins. And Rashi says the difference is only a chut hasaira. And Rav Weinberg Shlita said that the lashon of Havdalah also applies to Ben Yisrael Amen. We have in Havdalah, Motzi Shabbos, that you're mavdil Ben Yisrael Amen. And he says that there is a huge avodah, and this is actually the entire avodah of Galus. This is the avodah of Galus. The avodah of Galus is that there are nations and people who have midos that are similar to ours, and we go among them so that we can refine ourselves to the point of separation from those people. And until we do, we as a Jewish whole are missing something in our Jewish identities. And it is not a coincidence, and it's not what you call it. It's really very poignant that the Gullus that we're in now is Gullus Edom, and Gullus Edom lasts the longest Gullus ever. Like it says in the Medrash that when Yaakov saw the angel of Edom going up the ladder in the dream, it says he kept on going and going and going and going and going. And he said, maybe is he never ever going to come down? That's what Yaakov said. And that's a remiss to our current Gullus. And what we have to understand is that the reason why the Gullus is taking this long, everybody says, oh, Mashiach, this. Why is the Gullus taking so long? It's because we have not figured out how to separate ourselves from the reality of Esau, of Edom, of America. And this might not be comfortable for some people to hear, but this is what the Torah is telling us, 100%. We have to understand very, very, very clearly, and we have to ingrain in ourselves on an emotional identity structure level, the chiluk between us and Edom. Edom is a Judeo-Christian, and America is a Judeo-Christian state, place, whatever. I mean, that's officially what it is. And we are Judeo, we're Jews. And what you have now, for the most part in Klal Yisrael, is what you have is either people who are so scared of non-Jews and the influence of non-Jews that they go to a opposite extreme, which is also false, or you have people who just assimilate, and that's unfortunately over 50% of the Jewish people, more, 58%. And the reason why there's such high assimilation, obviously there's a lot of reasons, but Esav and Yaakov, like we see in this week's Parsha, Esav and Yaakov are not that different. They're twins. Esav and Yaakov are twins. That means Edom and Yisrael are twins. America and Israel are twins. That's why there's a Judeo-Christian thing. It's twins. The Havdalah between Yisrael and Ammon, when it comes to the Ammon being Edom, is extremely thin. It's Kechut HaSe'ara. The Havdalah is extremely, extremely thin. And we, in the Gullus, the reason why we're in Gullus is we have to be able to figure out the essence of the difference between us and Edom as a whole, as a nation, and we have to embrace that difference and integrate it into our Jewish identities on a mass scale. And once we do that, we will be zocheh to leave the Gullus. And I think that, when someone hears this, if someone's listening to this, they might say, okay, what do you mean? What do you mean? It's so pashut. What do you mean? I'm not, I do Torah mitzvahs. They don't do Torah mitzvahs. I believe in God. They, whatever. I don't do, what. If even one person who hears this does not tell me that they are an extremely, extremely, extremely American person, and that they have American values, and that they orient their lives in a manner which is American, that's just false. Factually, people in America orient themselves on an American level, and there's a lot of yesodos, and there's a lot of different things that go into that, and I'm talking about from shebefrum. And we have to figure out the extent of our orientation as Edom, and we have to figure out where the chiluk is between us and Edom, and we have to uproot the Edomness within us and leave it, and then we have to redefine ourselves in contrast to Edom, in contrast to Esau. And when we successfully do that, we are able to leave Gullus. And I don't know a lot of the things, but what I will say, and what I think the main part of it is, and this is just something to work on, is that Yaakov and Esav are separated by the simplest understanding of one lives is an existence which is internal, and the ramifications of his internal existence are displayed externally when it's necessary, and one lives an external existence and sometimes will come to an internal realization. And this is extremely intuitive. And this is really the part that we have to work on as Jews. Edom, America, is entirely a chazir. A chazir is someone, they spread their hoofs, but they don't chew their cud, meaning they show, like we're saying, they show, mirma, they show as if they're kosher, but they're not, because they don't chew their cud, and internally they have nothing. And the whole yesod of America, the whole yesod of Al Charbecha Sechia, is the yesod that the Ummah Ha'olam, the nations, America, lives, and its vitality comes from consumption of quantity. Let me say that again. America's vitality comes from consumption of quantity. Not only that, their entire existence is borrowed. It's overtaken. Charbecha, really, simply speaking, means that you kill people, which America does plenty as well. But the underlying yesod of Charbecha is that Esav always lives a borrowed life. America and Esav, their entire essence is borrowed, meaning they only operate in morality as a borrowed construct, not an internal construct, because they're not capable of internal morality. This is a fact. And Mimela, what we have to understand is that the essence, to me, and I'm nobody, but to me, the two main things is consumption, meaning the reality that people define themselves by how much they consume. That is the number one Edom thing, which we have to uproot. That's the number one thing. And the other one is external show only, existing on a level of reality where all of what's meaningful to you only exists in a manner in which its relevance only comes into play when other people are perceiving it. These two things are the essence of Edom, and I think many from Jews easily fit into these categories. Easily. And therefore, that's really what we have to work on. We have to be mavdil between us and Esav. And I give us all a bracha, especially if you listen this far, that the person who's listening in all of Klal Yisrael should be able to do this Havdalah. And when we do this Havdalah, we'll be zocheh to a Gilul Shlema. But Shabbos.